dog. Hello. My name is Ewok.
And this is my wife who just knocked my camera. But that's okay. We'll edit this together. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Suburban Rifleman. It is Labor Day weekend. Hopefully I'll get this edited and posted up so that it can drop on Labor Day morning. And if that's the case, happy Labor Day to all of you. And the fact that it's Labor Day is kind of germane to the subject of this video because it is aimed very squarely at working class Americans. In my last video, I alluded to the fact that I had purchased a new 9mm pistol, and parts of it came today. That was only really partly true because it wasn't a pistol, it was a bunch of parts to put a pistol together. As I'm sure most of you are no doubt already aware, Gaston Glock's patents on his Gen 3 pistols expired a couple of years ago, and there are tons and tons of Gen 3 Glock clones on the market today from companies like Zev and Shadow Systems. Polymer 80 has been making frames for Gen 3 Glocks for quite some time, and I think a lot of those other aftermarket companies are based on Polymer 80 frames. The market is absolutely saturated. It's basically taking off the same way that everybody makes an AR-15. Nowadays, everybody's going to be making a Glock before you know it. And one of these so-called Glock clones that's probably been more popular than anything else is the Dagger from Palmetto State Armory. And I happen to have a Dagger frame right here. It just arrived yesterday at my FFL. And because it is Labor Day, Palmetto State Armory is running one of its famous sales, and I managed to get this frame for $49.99, I think. I'll go over all of that in greater detail in the future. So my idea was to build as affordable a Glock 19 clone as I could by cobbling together parts from various websites and availing myself of Labor Day sale pricing to do so. And the total bill for this pistol before shipping and taxes and FFL transfer fees and all of that was, I think, $230 something. I'll go over all of that in the future. And I do have a sort of a long-term plan for this pistol as well, which I will cover at the end of this video. So stick around if you want to see what I have planned for this pistol in the future. And so the PSA Dagger is billed as a Glock 19 clone. And indeed, there is a lot of parts interchangeability. A lot of the inner mechanical parts will interchange, barrels will interchange, slides, magazines. But there are also some very fundamental differences about this frame. I haven't seen anybody else go over these differences. Maybe somebody else has. But I want to take a very close look, particularly at the frame. I also bought a slide, which is very straightforward Glock, at least inside. We have these extreme carry cuts, I think Palmetto State Armory calls these. They have other ones that have windows right through the slide. I wanted to get as Glock-like a slide as possible, although I really like these contour cuts that Palmetto State Armory has put on this. But that's a topic for a different video. So I did order all the parts to build the pistol, but the Glock and the recoil spring assembly are still about 10 miles away from my house, and now that it's Labor Day weekend, I won't get them. UPS is saying I'll probably get them on Wednesday, so maybe Tuesday, but anyway, it's given me an opportunity to take a very close look at the frame, particularly, and also the slide, and compare them with the slide from, say, this Glock 19X, which is unloaded. There's no magazines or ammo anywhere around here. The Glock 19X is a Gen 4.5 Glock, maybe, so there are some differences from the Gen 3 Glocks, which the Dagger is based on. But I also have my Gen 2 Glock 19, nothing in the pipe, no ammo anywhere around here. And this is actually, or it should be, mechanically identical inside to the Dagger frame, and it's not. I also have one more polymer frame pistol here, which is completely different. You can see nothing up the pipe, nothing in the barrel. This is my Sig Sauer SP 2022. It's also polymer frame, but of course it's hammer fired. It's a completely different operating system from the Glock, but there are some similarities in its construction that I want to take a look at. So let's take a close-up look at the Dagger frame as it compares to some of these other pistols and the slide, and then I'll come back and give you my thoughts and tell you what my long-term plans are for this pistol. Okay, so this is the fourth time I'm shooting this segment, and I'm now flustered. So hopefully I don't miss anything. And I don't really want to beleaguer the topic. I just want to show you a couple of things really quick. The proof of any gun is in the shooting, and we're not going to be able to do that until I get the other parts that are necessary to complete the Palmetto State Armory Dagger. But as we all know, the Dagger is essentially a clone of a Gen 3 Glock. And I don't happen to have a Gen 3 Glock here, but I do have a Gen 2 Glock, which is mechanically more or less identical to a Gen 3. So it should translate fairly well. One big difference that you can see right away, probably the most noticeable difference, is the trigger. We've got a hinge trigger like you would have had in an old Smith & Wesson Sigma. I had one years ago. I think Smith & Wesson was, at least until quite recently, using that sort of hinged trigger in their M&P series. I think I heard that they may have changed that, but it's a sort of a contrast to the trigger blade that you'll find on a Glock trigger, you know, whether you're talking about an old Gen 2 Glock like this one, or even a modern Gen, well, this is a 19X, so it's not really a Gen 5, it's sort of a Gen 4.5, but it still has that bladed trigger safety. But the more fundamental difference between the PSA Dagger and an older Glock, and this may have been discussed somewhere else, I haven't seen it, and it's something I noticed, so I just wanted to go over it with you a little bit, has to do with the frame rails. In these older Glocks, and even in modern Glocks like the 19X, you can see that the frame rails are tabs that are molded directly into the plastic frame. I don't want to get too close to the camera there, I keep losing focus, but the tabs are molded directly into the plastic frame. I've never heard of Glock frame rails failing, but if they did, the pistol would basically be shot. You'd have to chuck out the frame and either get a new frame or just buy an entirely new pistol. The same is true here on this Gen 2. You can see the rails are slightly different, but they're essentially the same in that they're molded directly into the plastic frame. The Dagger, although it is a Gen 3 Glock clone, and those patents have expired, has taken a slightly different approach. You can see this is the rear frame rail that the slide rides on, and these are the front frame rails that the slide rides on. And neither of those is molded into the frame. This is not a modular pistol. The serialized portion of the pistol is the frame itself. We still have an ID plate molded into the bottom of the dust cover here. But the frame rails are not permanently molded into the polymer frame. The rear frame rails, as you can see, if I don't lose focus here, try to get that away from the camera, are tabs that are bent over from this stainless steel housing that seems to run all the way around the fire control assembly. The trigger bar here is just about identical to that in a Glock, as you can see there. Certainly identical in operation, and it seems to be perfectly identical in design. Most of these internal parts, I think, are interchangeable with Glocks, and they look very, very similar. But this stainless steel housing that runs around the fire control group, and which is pinned in place with a roll pin back here, is definitely different than a Glock. And the biggest difference is probably in the locking block up front here. You can see the frame rails are actually formed out of the same piece of steel, monolithic piece of steel, that the locking block is made out of. In this Gen 2 Glock, the locking block is much smaller, and of course, as I already said, the frame rails are molded directly into the frame. On the Gen 3 or Gen 4 or Gen 4.5, Gen 5, whatever you want to call the 19X, the locking block is a little bit more substantial. It comes further forward, but the rails are still something completely different from that. So I don't know if that's going to affect function or longevity. Again, I've never seen anything about Glock frame rails failing, but if they did, again, the frame would be complete junk. On the Palmetto State Armory Dagger, I think you could just replace the locking block and be back in business. Now, one thing you'll notice about these frame rails is they are quite thin. They're more or less the same thickness as the rear frame rails, which are formed out of a piece of sheet metal. But the reason I got out the SIG SP 2022 is this is sort of reminiscent of that design. Here is the SIG SP 2022 frame, completely different back here. It's hammer fired. There's nothing even remotely like a Glock there. But the SP 2022 does have a steel locking block, and it functions much differently. It works off of a cross pin, which retains the slide and unlocks the barrel and locks the barrel, and is cross drilled there. But you can see the forward frame rails are actually part of this steel locking block. And they're a bit thicker and more substantial than you'll find in the PSA Dagger. These are quite a bit thinner. But keep in mind that a Glock slide or the Dagger slide weighs a lot less than the slide for the SP 2022. Also, the SP 2022, although this one's a 9mm, was designed like its parent pistol, the P229, and similar to the H&K USP, it was designed as a 40 Smith & Wesson. So it's not surprising that these rails are quite a bit more substantial than they are in the Dagger. And then when it comes to the slides, the only thing I can really show you is just how similar the Dagger slide is to this Gen 2 Glock 17 slide and this Gen whatever 4.5 Glock 19X slide. As you can see, the Dagger is virtually identical to this Gen 2 Glock. We've got this smaller plunger for the firing pin safety, as opposed to the larger one that you'll find in later generation Glocks. Other than that, it's dimensionally perfect. The thing that really struck me about this slide is how perfect it is. There's virtually no machine marks inside. As a matter of fact, I think there's more machine marks inside this ancient Gen 2 Glock 17 slide than there are inside this PSA Dagger slide. You can tell that the striker channel is new. You can feel a little bit of, well, actually that's pretty smooth. It's virtually the same as the striker channel on this Glock, which has, I would say, a very conservative estimate. This has about 10,000 rounds through it, and I would say probably more realistically, something more like 20,000 rounds through it. And I can't take credit for all of those rounds. I'm the third owner of this pistol, but I happen to know how much it was shot before I got it. This is a former police gun, but it wasn't a law enforcement trade-in. I bought this Gen 2 Glock 17 from the guy who was issued it second, and I'm the third owner. And the guy I bought it from was a very avid shooter and told me just how much it had been shot, and I've put quite a few rounds through it. And it's holding up really, really well, but that's not what we're here to look at. I'm just really impressed with the PSA Dagger slide, the machining on it. I've spent a fair amount of time running CNC machines. I know how to QC parts. I know what dull tools look like when they cut steel. And I mean, this is just a class act, a top-notch machining job on this. And again, we won't know until we shoot this pistol, but if the quality of this slide is any indication, I don't think we'll be running into any problems. Now, I got this on a really good deal. It was not only Labor Day weekend, but this was also on a clearance sale because this has a Docter optics cut, and I think PSA is doing away with all of their Docter optics cut slides. RMR is clearly the way forward, and it did come with a plate, which simply fills in there, and I'm not sure if I'm going to run with the plate first, but the reason I actually wanted the Docter cut is I happen to have not just a Docter compatible optic, but I have an actual Docter red dot here. You can see the little red LED there. Let's see if we can look through the optic. Well, that probably isn't coming out too well on my camera, but this is really a nice little optic, and it's made in Germany. It's very high quality. Docter has kind of pulled back from the US market. I think these are still quite popular in Europe and other parts of the world, but they're just not really having a great impact on the American market, and I think everything pretty much going forward is going to be RMR. And actually, Docter's largest contribution to the modern market is the cut of their optics being a base for many other optics. So I don't know how I'm going to run this right away. Maybe some of you will have an opinion. I don't know whether to put the plate on this and run it for a while bare, or whether to go ahead and put the optic on it right away. These are really good quality optics. They're quite tough. The only problem with these really is they're only splash proof. They're really not as water resistant as modern optics. I think to take it out to the range, to carry it, to use it, even shooting it in the rain is fine, but you're not going to submerge this pistol in water and expect this kind of rare and relatively expensive optic to survive. So let me know what you guys think, if I should put the optic on it right away or if I should run it with the plate for a while till we see how the pistol runs. So overall, I'm really quite impressed with the PSA Dagger, especially considering the extremely low price you can get it at, particularly if you wait for Labor Day or Columbus Day or President's Day or Veterans Day or whatever sale day that the PSA decides to put out there. Palmetto State is really good at running daily deals and, you know, holiday sales. So if you want to build something like this, or one of their AR-15s, or one of the other many products that they make, you can always, if you're willing to bide your time, you can always find a good deal eventually on what you want to build. But my idea behind building this pistol, which I talked about a little bit in the beginning of this video, is I've seen a lot of reviews of the PSA Dagger. I've seen some so-called long-term reviews of the PSA Dagger. I've seen some criticisms of the PSA Dagger for parts breakages or whatever. Most of those seem to have been 2 years ago when the pistol first came out. It's clear that PSA is improving the Dagger as they go along. They do listen to their customers. Obviously, they want to process as few warranty claims as possible. So it is, and they're selling a ton of these things. So it behooves them to make as good an initial product as possible. I think this pistol's probably going to hold up pretty well. But what I have not seen in video format, and I actually haven't seen this, I don't know, this is either a brilliant idea or it's a stupid idea. I haven't seen it on any other channel with any other pistol. My plan, once I get this completely assembled, is to shoot this pistol as long as I can, as long as my ammunition budget holds out. And I have made up a logbook. I very rarely keep a track of round counts on any guns, but I've made up a logbook, particularly for this pistol, and I am going to document every single round that goes through the pistol, every single stoppage. Well, this is all screwed up now. Maximum recording time reached? What the fuck are you talking about?
Lola, you screw up Papa Celia?
No, Lola didn't screw it up. My phone screwed it up. Okay, here we go.
This is my dog. Hello. Huh? My name is Ewok.
And this is my wife who just knocked my camera. But that's okay. We'll edit this together. So anyway, before my camera decided to stop recording all on its own, I was beginning to tell you that my plan for this pistol is to document in a logbook every round fired, every stoppage, every parts breakage, every parts replacement, all the associated costs with that. And I'm planning to make weekly installments, maybe 100 rounds at a time. I'll have them drop very regularly, maybe on a Thursday night, maybe on a Saturday night. I don't know if you guys are going to be interested in that or not, but I'm going to shoot this pistol and shoot this pistol and shoot this pistol until the wheels come off of it or I run out of money for 9mm ammunition. And again, I don't know if this is a stupid idea or not. Only your reaction to the videos will be the ultimate deciding factor of that, but that's my plan at the moment. And unless there's some sort of catastrophic change in the state of the pistol, we're going to do it. And when I do that, I hope to see each of you then. Stay tuned for the next video where we will take a look at the completed pistol, hopefully. Later, guys.